There's been this very common phenomenon in the commentariat since Kamala Harris has lost to Donald Trump. All these people, some of whom were even predicting Kamala Harris winning only a few weeks ago, lauding her disciplined campaign, now proclaiming, so here's where Kamala Harris went wrong. She didn't appeal to me personally. She didn't run my views. If she did, she would have won. She should have been more pro-Palestine. She should have been more pro-Israel. She should have talked about the climate more. She should have said she'd never banned fracking. She should have gone on Joe Rogan. She gave too many interviews. She should have gone on more unfriendly media. She was too woke. She wasn't woke enough. She should have promised to go on a date with me, a lonely male, and to help get the bro vote. And I'm included in this group. But we're all still right, because Harris actually lost ground to Trump with basically every demographic. And in a world where you're expected to stick your flag in the ground in support of one competing demographic or interest group in favor of another, how is it possible to lose all of them? With the spectre of Gaza looming large over this election, Trump not only improved on his performance with Jewish voters, he won Michigan's Arab voters, becoming the first Republican to win Dearborn, the city with the largest Arab population since George Bush in 2000. And they sure repaid the favor to George by making sure he'd win in 2004 again. Sorry, that was a bad joke. We can't blame all Arabs for the actions of Israel. Trump improved with both Jews and Arabs, despite saying if he lost it would be the Jews' fault and using the word Palestinian as a slur. He truly is a man of destiny. He's incredible. No one does it better. And it actually all makes perfect sense. Screw pretending not to find his jokes funny. And you know what? Screw thinking about policy. I don't even want to give the disclaimer that I like Kamala's policies more. I mean, I do, but think about it. Who wants to be shamed into voting for an unelected career politician preordained as president by a vicious party machine made up of some of the most boring, nasty people in the United States of America? When you can vote for literally, some people are saying the greatest man who's ever lived. We had this exact matchup in 2016. I don't know why I expected it to go any different this time. What was I thinking? Well, because Kamala Harris's speeches were more poll-tested and focus group than Clinton's? Can't you just imagine the Democrat consultants running focus groups before the election, frustratedly screaming, so you want a realistic, down-to-earth candidate who's completely off the wall and swarming with magic robots? That's right. Yeah. And also, you should win things by voting. You voters don't know what you want. That's why you're still MAGA, because you're racist. Yes, I'm aware I used this Simpsons bit in a video like 3 weeks ago, but it worked here as well, shut up. Little did they realize that Trump was that exact candidate. He even had the magic robots and winning things by voting. Yeah, the intro was about the USA, but it is somewhat applicable to Australia, and I think that should serve as a warning to the people in the Labor Party, people like strong, aggressive leaders, and people like leaders who are elected and tested. It should be obvious, but the more rank-and-file pre-selections you allow, the better you'll do. The worst thing Labor could do right now is decide to parachute in more professional managerial elites into safe seats. Or even worse, pre-select people with the same style of glasses as Albanese. Honestly, Scobo was right. Albo's glow-up probably did cost him a seat or two. We already even had a test run of the Harris model, wherein apparatchiks forced on Fowler, an unelected party heavyweight, and Labor lost what should have been a shoo-in. How many times do the Democrats have to lose to prove that they're in structural decline before Labor stops trying to replicate them, including their personalities too? Leave the Obama impersonations to Malcolm Turnbull, guys. Isn't it obvious? Whoever looks less technocratic or uptight, that's a major factor in deciding every Australian election, bar maybe 2016, but still, Labor shouldn't have even been competitive in that election. It's why Bill Shorten almost won. He was running a populist campaign against an eastern suburbs toff. ScoMo then flipped the script somewhat in 2019 with his Shire dad cosplay, but that act got annoying enough, coupled with the Scotty from Marketing sledge. That tied him as a managerial elite in Bogan's clothing, which allowed Albo to eke out a victory in 2022. A victory that was heavily aided by usually liberal voting university-educated elites being turned off by the Shire stick, so much so that they voted for social progressive teal independents in Australia's richest seats, which funnily enough, college-educated socially progressive elites is the one demographic Democrats continue to do better with. Now, I know there's a lot of bluster about teal voters just being tactical Labor or Greens voters, but the point is, those seats were rusted on Liberal seats. So enough Liberals flipped to make them independent, which means Labor is in a pretty decent position. They don't have to win these teal seats. They never will anyway. They don't have to reckon with the wedge of trying to win Wentworth and Tamworth. They don't have to propose dumb shit to appeal to the activewear-clad, juice-cleansed, designer dog walking population of Sydney's eastern suburbs. That's Dutton's headache to deal with. Conversely, Labor should propose dumb shit to appeal to the activewear-clad, juice-cleansed, designer dog walking population of Sydney's western suburbs. Those are seats Labor actually is at risk of losing, and there are a lot of great accomplishments for this Labor government to campaign on. Tony Burke's industrial relations reforms, huge. Same job, same pay, huge. Fixing the stage 3 tax cut so 85% of Australians get a larger tax cut. In fact, barely anyone knows this, but right now Labor are fighting for a tax avoidance crackdown on multinational companies and a crackdown on deceptive supermarket pricing and supermarket land banking. And yet, despite these noble pursuits, I get the impression that the main fights that the Albanese government is staking its public perception on are these bizarre, technocratic, inconsequential nanny state overreaches cooked up at the key parties of Canberra. The Voice, misinformation laws, and now social media ban for the kiddies. Don't get me wrong, social media, especially for kids, awful. I have an entire social media account dedicated to reciting that very fact. Quick, go subscribe before Chairman Elbow stops you from learning the truth. Is this really something that needs this type of government intervention? And do we really want to force multinational tech companies to come up with their own age verification process, which might require these foreign companies to store our biometrics? And even if the answer to that question is yes, which it very well could be, and even if this policy is popular, which it very well might be, during the worst cost of living crisis in most Australians' living memory, is it really what you want to stake your government's reputation on? Think about it, Labor. Is this the fight you want your government to be remembered for before the next election? If you do nothing else, stop wasting your political capital and needlessly isolating people with these fights that do nothing to improve the material conditions of the vast majority of Australians, and just run on the bread and butter issues that you're already chipping away at quietly. Just switch it up. Start saying the quiet part loud. I mean, come on. I'll always accuse the Greens of proposing stupid shit to appeal to a narrow and insufferable demographic, but if not for a few suburbs in Canberra and Melbourne, who exactly is the government really exciting with these reforms? I think former Labor Senator and former leader of Victoria's industrial left faction, Kim Carr, expressed how damaging the Voice was best when he said the practical effect of the referendum was to pit one part of Labor's broad coalition of support against the other. And he's right. It pit university-educated, wealthier city dwellers against Labor's traditional base of, well, Labor, with the more affluent electorates voting yes, and no winning the lower income electorate. And it was done for no good reason. At least Harris was kind of forced to isolate voters because she was the VP to an unpopular incumbent and beholden to the Israel lobby. Plus she was running against the guy who wrote the Art of the Deal. And if there's any candidate who is going to bring Israelis and Palestinians together, it's got to be Trump. Albeit they're probably going to be brought together in the West Bank when a bunch more Israelis move in. But the point is, Albo, if you're going to do a small target strategy, do a small target strategy. Yeah? The Voice was a colossal waste of political capital that even if it passed, it wouldn't have done as much as a government could already do without a change to our constitution. You thought you could wedge Dutton, but congratulations, you wedged yourself. We've been touching on this a lot recently, but this Canberra bubble, this professional managerial class, it makes you lose touch to the point that you honestly seem to be less excited about campaigning on boring shit like multi-employer bargaining, and instead really animated by some woke academic theories and borderline schizophrenic anxiety about Andrew Tate, pushing through legislation that is not even designed to solve these imagined problems, but to pacify the cultural anxieties of the progressives in this very bubble. It's a total misunderstanding of what should be the function of government, as it's so out of touch and overbearing. These exact social campaigns are the ones that lead to the backlashes that fuel these very boogeymen. Like Andrew Tate, he obviously sucks. I mean, his university doesn't. That taught me how to be a man. But you think dropping millions of taxpayer dollars to out-of-touch advertising firms to produce crap like this?
Women don't want you to be kind. They want you to control them.
Hey, I'm talking to you.
What do you think? I'm not good enough for you?
You're gonna regret blocking me.
James, is everything all right?
Yeah, it's nothing.
You're definitely all right.
Yeah.
Do you know what's influencing your kids? Learn the hidden trends of disrespect before they lead to violence. Authorised by the Australian Government, Canberra.
That's going to stem his influence. Or do you think that it might just prove the Matrix is real? $1 billion couldn't beat Trump. It's like thinking the Greens are winning over National Party voters by hiring increasingly worse graphic designers. Oh, jeez, they got the hijab and everything. There's a reason people hate lefties and big government, and I'm telling you now, it's not because of overtime pay. It's not because of Medicare. Well, it is in America, but not here. It's not because of making Google pay tax. It's not even the environmental regulations, except the fucking bags of cows. It's because for some reason, Western governments across the world all of a sudden decided that they can become the social police. Don't they know that's the Sydney Morning Herald's job? Again, Kim Carr gets it, recently saying the Labor ship has struck the rock of identity politics, with too many of its spokespeople adopting a censorious tone to those who fail to embrace their particular social policy agendas. Now, at this point, I must interject. I am sick to death of the Murdoch press pretending that the Liberal Party is based and doesn't do the exact same cuck shit. How many times have we pointed out that both the Murdoch press and the Murdoch Party cry whenever it suits them, oh, racist, oh, sexism, here's our own way worse bullshit censorious laws. They have a cry whenever it suits them. And you know why? Because all politicians, all of them, they are all part of this class. All the journalists too, they're in the Canberra bubble. And all I'm saying is, if you want to win elections, Labor, you got to pop that shit. I mean, think about it. You have really good economic and environmental policies to point to. This shit here, this is what kills politicians. Barilaro coasted along just fine as this maverick right-winger until he decided to humiliate himself by going all woke with his Wog Lives Matter shtick. Hashtag defund the ICAC, bruz. Doesn't seem to work for the Greens, and they almost solely run on this type of messaging. No, watch out, as party leader Adam Bandt is planning a musical spectacular set to make the Greens' primary vote skyrocket. In the Parliament of today, politicians are faced with drugs, sex, neoliberalism. It's just not right. One man, one politician tried to make a difference. That man's name is Adam B. Look, Adam Bandt is just Mr. G. My name is Adam B. 3 talents, 1, 2, 3. Singing and dancing and acting is my life. Oh, Celine, why did you run on the road? It's Labor's fault for leaving the door of the gym open. I'm not even exaggerating. He actually makes these videos. Look. Alright, I think we're going to have to do a poll in the comments. What was cringier, that or Fatima Payman's Zoomer speech? That was some Mr. G level narcissism. How good is this comment though? He is the blueprint for how every white Australian should be. You know who understood this new class struggle better than any Australian politician before him or since? The most successful politician of our time. Mark Latham. Nah, it's John Howard. The only man to have ever beaten Mark Latham. Before his landslide victory in the '96 election, it was reported that Howard was reading the works of historian Christopher Lash, which, Johnny, might I say, a man of refined taste. Big fans of Mr. Lash here at Friendly Geordie's HQ. Now, this is interesting. Howard was inspired by Lash's critiques of the US's managerial elites. This critique formed a pillar of Howard's messaging in his campaigns. The one quote that really distills Lash's criticism, which Howard tapped into, is his description of America as a society dominated by corporate elites with an anti-elitist ideology. Now, ironically, no one did more to ensure corporate and ruling class domination of Australian society than John Howard. I've explained explained that in plenty of other videos, but goddamn, he understood how to package it. That quote describes the way a new generation of elites began to eschew their responsibility to society by self-consciously denying their positions at the top of hierarchies, even sometimes pretending hierarchies don't exist past the realm of race and gender. Therefore, these new elites can't be culpable of any exploitation they may benefit from. Think about how many times, when hearing the life story of a politician or a CEO, you hear some variation of, they got to their position despite all the odds being against them because of insert identity politics signifier. So self-conscious about their place at the top that these new elites also felt compelled to undermine the long-established authority and traditions of the elites of the past. For example, republicanism being a pet issue of the richest in Australian society. This quote also distills why initiatives like DEI and affirmative action and The Voice prove so compelling to the ruling classes. They're initiatives that don't seek to address core problems and lift everyone's material conditions up. Rather, they elevate a select few members of chosen marginalised groups to join the new anti-elitist elite, whether it be via a DEI hire, an affirmative action college admission, or a position on the new symbolic wing of government with no actual power. That's why every corporation supported The Voice, but is also conversely why they aren't really that fussed about Peter Dutton being against it. The largest material impact these issues have is to provide opportunities for bleeding hearts to feel good, and then for people like John Howard, Donald Trump, and possibly Peter Dutton to sweep into power. Because now they get all the fun optics of a class war, raging against the most annoying rich people there are, without making any real enemies of the corporate elite. Sorry. I know this is a very long way of saying, Labor, drop the censorious cuck shit. Do whatever Stephen Miles was doing in Queensland. That seemed to work well. Good news, since we made this video, they've dropped the misinformation bill. You can see why I didn't like the misinformation bill here, but it just goes to show that Labor, unlike the Libs, are actually responsive to what the electorate wants. Man, that's weird to have it in government after 10 years, isn't it? Hey, also, I've got shows to Mackay, Sunshine Coast, Rockhampton, they're over there, and also, guess what? We've got a video on supermarkets. That's big. That's coming out very soon. So make sure you subscribe for that. It's also available on Patreon.